Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and career and finance. But more importantly, this show is all about athlete transition out of sport. It's such a major issue today between mental health, financial literacy, career, and we want to help make a difference. So we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey, their transition out of sport ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And so excited today to have Vonn Webb. How you doing, Vonn?
Great. Thanks for having me, my man. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. And we talk about networking. I met Vonn through a good friend of mine, Keith, who was on the podcast as well. And maybe Vonn will share one of his stories. We'll save that for another day. So like if Keith happens to listen to this, we got you covered, Keith. You're okay. So I always like to talk about how did sports shape you growing up, leading up into college?
Well, I was a athlete my entire life, but I kind of had some, what do you call it, mentors or heroes, guys that I wanted to be like, and they're all athletes. I come from a pretty rough town, and the athletes were the one that caught my attention, not some of the other guys, and so it made it pretty easy for me to. They were basketball players and baseball players and football players. So I just wanted to be like them, and it helped keep me mentally on the right path. Kept me out of trouble. My grandmother was real about not getting in trouble, because if you get in trouble at school, you're gonna get in more trouble at home. You know, and if you get locked up, I'm not putting money on your book.
You go. You got to listen to grandmothers. She's the grandmothers. They're the rule of the house there for sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and so basically, Von parlayed that into both a football and a basketball career in college. He went to Western New Mexico, and then once he was done playing, he decided to get into the coaching. And a bunch of different high schools, middle schools made an impact on a lot of people. Like I mentioned, Keith, he made an impact on him. And then ultimately, he was at University of Wyoming, Fresno State, and a couple other schools, and working in their basketball programs. When he got done with playing and coaching, got into some public speaking, and then he's pretty passionate about his nonprofit organization, Shaded, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then also some of the getting into just helping athletes in their careers. So once you were in school, Vonn, and now you're playing college ball. I talk about transition out of sport, and we talked a little bit offline. And this is something that back when you and I went to school, probably not as big with the education side of things, but it's so important today. Along the years, have you seen changes in making more of an attempt, even with coaches like yourself, educating athletes on what's next after sports?
Yeah. I've seen a lot of it at the university level. There are actually classes that they have offered that are to help kids prepare for that next level. And for me, I was blessed to work with a company called Athletes to Careers, which is something that wasn't at the school itself that I was working at, was UC Riverside, but the guys that I met that had that company, it was something that they took very seriously and taught me more about it. And when I got out of the coaching field, I actually went to work with them, because I thought it was a very good opportunity to help these kids transition from being a student athlete or a professional athlete into the real world, into the workforce. But even at UC Riverside, there were classes that they had for kids that were for our students that were to help prepare them fiscally, and career wise. They did some good things for them, but that didn't happen when I was coming up. We didn't have that opportunity when I was coming to school, when I was going to school.
No, unfortunately not. And I think it's great to hear that they're doing it today because it's so important. I mean, I think there's some definite challenges when you're done with sport, and some of these people that basically they're a nose to the grindstone, understand they're playing their sport and not really thinking about it. But then when they're done, all of a sudden, whether it's just the end of the road, end of college, whether they get hurt, maybe some are forced to play professional ball. There's just that struggle, and to integrate into, like we always say, the real world, but just to get into careers and stuff like that, where maybe a lot of their other fellow students who are non-athletes or ones that ended their careers earlier had some opportunities in that space. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and just the importance of it, and especially while you're still playing.
I tell students this. I tell student athletes this all the time. I used to preach it to my son. It's all about, because you never know who you're going to meet on that college campus, right? You never know who's going to be in that classroom next, in that desk next to you in that classroom. You never know who's going to be in the library. Those type of things. I always told them, you always want to network and connect with people at every opportunity, because you never know when you may be able to help someone. Someone may be able to help you, or you may need someone. Someone may need you. You just don't know. Building your network, because I always said your network is your net worth. And if you do that, puts you in a position where you have more options, more choices, and that's so important. And I tell these athletes, even nowadays, even more so because of this social media and the whole 9 yards, they have so many more opportunities to put themselves out there, to make themselves readily available for opportunities after they complete their sport of choice, when they get their degree or whatever the case may be. I think it's so important. It's so definitely important.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that sometimes you look at even I talk about even at the high school level. I mean, you've got your friends, your teammates, you got their parents, coaches. I mean, there's a lot of people that you can meet along the way, and just be open to doing that. I bring this up on some of the other podcasts where I was talking to two freshmen in a sophomore college now, baseball player, football player, and they talked about how they weren't really taught that growing up. And again, they're not that far removed from that high school level, but think like Vonn said, it's so important. And especially while you're playing, because people are enamored by athletes. And I think you can get opportunities in the community, especially now, of course, with NIL and, name, image, likeness, you see it even more so.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a positive thing, to be able to help these kids prepare themselves for that next level. And if you do it the right way, I just think it needs to be done the right, in regards to the NIL situation opportunities. Yeah, if you do it the right way, it really propels you. And I think that on the women's side of the sports, I think they really understand how it all works, because they're really doing it, to me, in a better light than it is on the men's side.
Yeah, 100%. And I talk. I've got another podcast, NIL for you, and we talk about a lot of stories in NIL. And I think most people are looking at the portal and looking at the big dollars that some of these athletes are making, but there's so much more to it, to like what you were saying, especially like in a women's sports. I mean, there's opportunities for individuals to basically become an entrepreneur. They've
Yes,
got, they're starting a business, they're getting opportunities to know how to promote their business with social media and other avenues. And even the fact of like educating, like, hey, you start an LLC, because guess what? You got to pay taxes and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much to that.
percent. And I like the fact we talk about becoming an entrepreneur, having an entrepreneurial spirit. It's so much opportunity to do that today. Is so much better, so much more recognized, so much more appreciated than it was before. The kids that have that mentality really need to take this opportunity as a college athlete and take it to that next level and help themselves, prepare themselves for that, for when they are completed.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about let's talk a little bit about alumni engagement. This is something obviously important to us at Alumni Direct is kind of creating these communities and bringing alumni back. And a lot of times you'll talk to some of these athletic departments, and I think some want to bring the athletes back, some don't, or maybe it's just not that communication. Um, we're going to talk about a couple phases with you. One, let's talk about back when you were in school. Was there any movement toward bringing back alumni athletes, not just for that golf tournament, but to mentor and work with the athletes?
You know what? I went to three different schools. I went to junior college, and I went to Kansas State, and then I went to Neosho County Community College, Kansas State, and then Western New Mexico. And the only place that the alumni were really um, a part of what we were doing was at Kansas State. There were some former players that came back and talked to us in the summer, and then there were some that were helping doing some things on campus with younger students, and we'd interact with them at that time. But the other places, not so much. We didn't have. I haven't. When I was there, didn't really know anyone that was alumni at that time. I will say this: at Western New Mexico, we have what they call it's in the spring, it's called the Great Race Week. And they have this big great race. Students build cars and they push through this what do you have it? It's a trail, or no, a track. They build a track and they do this. It's a lot of fun for the week, and a lot of alumni come back for that. They did come back for that, but they really didn't come back to really sit down with us or try to help prepare us for that next step. They just came back to have a good time. And so, and not so much when I was in school.
Right. And then kind of fast forward. I mean, let's talk a little bit from because you always hear players talk about their coaches. I mean, obviously, if they have a great relationship with their coach and coaches caring and all that. Uh, Talk about an alumni perspective from that. As a coach, were you bringing back alumni, whether it was from the high school or from the college to kind of meet these athletes, and again, not just be about a one-time thing, but maybe kind of mentoring, and even all the way up to recent times as a coach.
Oh, I tell you, that's been the one thing for me because that was something that I felt that I missed, right? And with the coaches that I had, and I go back and I say this: from the time I started playing basketball in high school, from my senior year, well, I started playing as a sophomore. From my Yeah, well, every year I had a different coach. As a sophomore, I played on the sophomore team. As a junior, I played junior varsity and some varsity. I had a different coach. As a senior, I had a different coach that was at the varsity level. As a freshman at Neosho County, we had one coach, and as a sophomore, we had another coach. A new coach came in. When I went to Kansas State, I had Coach I've been there then. When I left there, I went to New Mexico. The first year we had one guy. Then the next year he left, another guy came in. So it's just like it's kind of crazy because I had a different coach every year that I played basketball. When I played football, and I only played football 2 years in college, I had the same coach for 2 years. That's the longest extent that I had a coach was for 2 years. But for me, I always wanted my players to feel like I was there for them because where I coached at the high school level, it was in a very low socioeconomic situation. And a lot of those guys didn't have anybody to look up to. They didn't have anybody they could reach out to. And my mission was to get them all graduated, and everyone that wanted to go to college, I was help them get there if they couldn't get there. And then to this day, I have student athletes, former student athletes of mine that I talk to that are fathers and business owners, and doing a whole bunch of different things that I still connect with on a regular basis. I hear from them constantly, constantly. So, but that was something that I wanted. That's the culture that I wanted within my program, and even kids that I coach at the collegiate level to this day. They come back, they call, they meet me. They've come here to Dallas. They've met me when I was in California. I have a game somewhere. Here they come. But they call with questions, and they call with concerns, and they call with let me know how they're doing, and they want to know how and I'm always open to help them. That's just what it's about. It's about helping these kids. And I think more schools, more coaches, that ought to be the mentality that they should have is to try to help them as much as possible whenever they can.
Yeah, and that's something I always talk about. Even talk about with like networking is just kind of having that pay it forward attitude and helping. But I've talked to so many athletes, and I look back to I was a runner in high school, college, cross country, track, and I think back to some of the coaches that were influential in my life, and I think it's so important. Even it's interesting. We probably had a sidebar about this, but I did a lot of coaching with my son of a travel baseball team. I managed a travel baseball team, and it always struck me when I first started talking to one of the elder coaches in the league who'd gone through it. And at that time, his son was probably, 10, 15 years removed. But he talked about what you just said is that, hey, like he's getting inviting to the weddings and all these other things. And just the kids just, they reach back out. We're like, we even talked about it recently. Like my wife and son are like, yeah, we should do a reunion for my travel baseball team. And yeah, I did it until they were like 13. So now it's, come turn like 16, 17 years later, let's have a reunion and bring them all back and just kind of get together. So it's a testament to you, Vonn, as a coach and that you care, and I think that's really important.
It's very important to me because, like I said, a lot of these kids came from nothing, and most of them, honestly, to be totally honest with you, most of them didn't have a father figure in their life, right? And so I knew that that was part of my role because I didn't have one growing up. I was raised by my grandmother, if I didn't have a couple mentors that stepped in to help me, I would have never ever. I'd have been lost. I would have been locked up somewhere or dead. To be honest with you, so I know that that's just part of who I am and part of my fiber. And these kids know it. They know it. They bring their kids. I have my own grandkids, but through all my players, I have a whole lot more. But it
Yeah,
is what it is. I don't mind that at all. That's fine. I'm good with that. I'm
yeah, it's
good with
great being
that.
a grandparent. I've got a couple myself, got a couple
Yeah, so
grandsons.
you know the feeling. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
it's awesome for sure. So I always I don't know if you got a chance to watch or listen to any of the podcasts before this, but
Yeah.
I always ask two questions, so you might be prepared for. So if you can go back in time and you can have a conversation with freshman in college, Vonn, what advice, 10 words or less, would you give?
Oh man, I tell you what, I would tell Vonn, first of all, you're not as good as you think you are. You're not that good. Yeah. Stay true to who you are though as a person. Just continue to do what you do. Continue to work hard. Yeah, because I've always been a pretty hard worker, and I've had a lot of adversity, physically as an athlete and as a player, as a person. And you don't know this. I was hit by a truck when I was 11 years old, and I was told I may not be walking by the time I'm 30, and I shouldn't be playing anymore. I should leave sports alone, and I was hard headed, and I was like, forget that. If I love sports, I'm gonna play until I can't go anymore, right? So I did that, and so it's like, okay, but I would tell myself, just keep doing what you're doing, keep being who you're not a bad guy, just keep doing what you're doing. That's just for real.
And then fast forward to senior Vonn.
Take advantage of every day that you have, because life is short. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and continue to be the parent and grandfather that you've been, and just continue to be there for the people that you love and that love you.
Well, no, that's great. I'm with you on that. But I meant senior in high school. I mean, senior in college, Vonn.
Oh, so you're in college? I thought you meant like now.
No, I'm not calling you a senior, man. We're young, buddy. We're as long as we're young at heart. Senior in college. That is good advice. I'm gonna take that for myself too.
Senior in college? Well, that was crazy because I had two opportunities. I had a contract to go play basketball in Australia, and I had a contract to go play football in Canada. And I might have said, Vonn, take that basketball contract and go finish playing, keep playing as long as you can play, right? Because I kind of did miss the game, because I became a football guy after basketball. But I should have probably kept on playing basketball for a little while longer. And my life might have been a little different, but who knows? I probably would have went and done that, went and played.
There you go. All right. So now, we talk about transition out of sports. So I'm going to cover this in some different areas with you. So when you're looking at when you were done playing, okay, so your college career's over. You did get into coaching, but what was that transition like out of this? You've been an athlete your whole life playing it. Now you're not playing anymore. I mean, you are in a sense because you're still coaching, but how was that for you?
Well, that was one of the things when I moved to California. I found a softball league to play in. I found men's basketball league to play in. I was coaching, and I went to every sporting event I could because that's who we are. We're athletes, and that's what we do our entire life. That's kind of the bulk of our existence. And so I just kind of engulfed myself with sports and tried to stay as close to the game as possible. And I never really felt a nasty, or not that I would say nasty, but a mean transition. I never had like any type of letdowns or anything because I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed being around sports, and as long as I was coaching, I was going to be fine because I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, that's great. So like now, as a coach, because you're seeing it now. You're seeing players coming up at the end of their careers. Did you ever give guidance on that as far as kind of helping them in that transition out, like once they were done playing, for college?
Oh, I mean, all the time. I mean, that's something that is that I'm that probably daily. Something that I did there. I mean, because athletes call, like I said, people, kids call, and I was trying to help get them prepared for that next level. And then working with athletes to careers, that was my job. My job was to help give advice, help teach them how to write resumes, help teach them how to interview, help teach them how to prepare themselves for that next opportunity and what was possibly to come, and how they can take what they've used and learned from being an athlete all these years to putting them in a position to be successful in life, with their whatever career they chose to go into.
So kind of boil it down. Maybe give some words of advice to athletes, regardless of what sport, as they come to that point where they do need to transition out of whether it's as a high school athlete, a college athlete, professional athlete.
Well, it's about. I always say this, and I use this mantra. I've used it forever, and you can ask Keith; he'll probably recite it. I've always said your mentality perpetuates your reality, right? And to me, it's always been that way because if you want to be something, you want to do something, then what's your mentality towards it? What kind of work ethic are you going to have? What kind of, how are you going to approach this thing? How are you going to position yourself? What kind of understanding are you going to give yourself and you're going to have as to where you want to be and where you're going to be? Your mentality perpetuates your reality. Who are you? That's just what it's all about for me, and that's been that mantra. And like I said, I had a buddy of mine who brought me a business card that I had when I first started coaching, and that was on the bottom of my business card. And I met him 35, 40 years ago, and he goes, "Man, you don't remember me, but I met you, and at this time, is this the card you gave me?" And I looked at it and I was like, "Wow, I did say that." But that's what I've always felt. That's what I've always believed in, and it's pretty simple. If you have the right mentality, your reality is going to be just what you want it to be.
Okay. And then, so let's talk a little bit athletes to career. So one thing that I always come across is that when athletes are getting done with their sport and they're in college, a lot of times they're like, what am I going to do with my life now? It's like I played sport the whole time. I didn't do internships and things like that. Talk a little bit about the athlete, the skill set, the DNA of an athlete that makes him so attractive to employers to hire them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things some of the things that when he started that's one of the things we talked about because it was so impressive to me, is the fact that as an athlete, you're a teammate. We got a great work ethic. You're disciplined. You have all these different factors that come to play in regards to you being hired, especially in the business world and corporations and things like that. But just on an individual basis, just you have the skill set too. If you were an athlete going through high school and college, well, you're ahead of the game in a lot of senses because people want those kind of people. And I remember I used to talk with the people at Enterprise, and I use them as an example because Enterprise will work the dog's snot out of you, when you're coming in there as a rookie, so to speak, as a first year out of college employee. But they know they hire a lot of athletes because they know the athletes can take that. They can get in that grind and they can take all the everything that hits them in the face. They can deal with it. They can work under pressure. They can work a lot of hours. They're young, they're energetic, and they're strong and they're motivated. So those are all the things that as an athlete you bring to the table. Sometimes people that are not athletes don't have that same constitution. They don't. That's not who they are. But athletes, especially to be a collegiate athlete, and if you become a pro at some level, that's you've done that because of your resolve, things that you work, things that you have intrinsically, and it goes back to the mentality. They have that. They have those things, and that's what people want. That's what they really want to help. Because you get a bunch of young kids that's working like that, they figure out how to work together. They figure out how what it takes. And if they want to be successful, you're going to be successful if you're the business owner. So.
Yeah, that's so true. And even to take it a step further into entrepreneurship, right? I mean, as far
Yeah,
as
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You see a lot of entrepreneurs are former athletes, right? Because that's just what it is, and then you got that drive, and then you got that, you're motivated, and it's like, okay, and if it doesn't happen the way you wanted to initially, well, let me figure this thing out. Let me go back and rework it and try it again. Let me try it this way. If it doesn't work, if plan A doesn't work, I gotta have a plan B, C, and D, right? Let's see what happens. But that's just kind of how it goes.
yeah, no, absolutely. And we encourage athletes all the time. I mean, just when you're done, I mean, people want to hire you. Everything that Vonn just talked about. I mean, just the team, the leadership, just everything that goes into being an athlete just plays well into your next phase of your life. So don't feel like okay, what am I going to do with myself? Tap into that skill set that you have, and then everything we've been talking about is just the alumni portion of it, networking, connecting. There's so many ways for athletes to have success when their sport is done.
Yes. Yes, and I agree with you. I think the alumni need to do more and more. Some universities they do a great job. Some not so much, right? But that just needs to be more, and they need to be more involved to help these kids prepare for that next level.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about your passion project, Stay Shaded. Maybe talk about the origin of that and what you're trying to do and making a difference and helping people.
Well, Stay Shaded was developed based upon I lost my son 3 years ago to almost the day. It was May 10th, 2022. I lost him to an accidental fentanyl poisoning. And he was a Division I athlete. My son played Division I basketball and Division I football. He wanted to be better than me, and he was, and he was. I gave him all the credit for that. I tell you, he really was. But he never played, just like myself. He never played high school football. He never played football in high school at all, but he played basketball, and he was a Division I player, and he went to a Division I school at a high school. Then he transferred and went to a junior college in Texas, and then ended up calling me one night and said, "Dad, I want to play football." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, he calls me and tells me he wants to play football. Like this guy is tripping. He calls me and we talk about that, and so I said, "Let's talk about it." Anyway, long story short, he ends up getting the opportunity to play at Southern Utah University. And the coach says, "Coach Vonn, send me some film on him." I said, "I don't have any football film." He said, "Well, send what you have." And I sent him some basketball film, and my son ran a 4.45 40, and he had a 45-inch vertical jump, and he was just a very, very good athlete. He was a 6'10" high jumper in high school. He was just a gifted athlete. And so the coach saw the film and he's like, "We'll take him." And so he got there and ended up doing pretty well. Ended up being defensive back of the year for him and played there. And they had a lot of success when he was there. And ultimately, he had injuries during that time, and I didn't know it. When he ended up becoming addicted to Percocets, and I did not know that was even dealing with that, right? And that's something as a parent that you never you never you can never get over the fact that you didn't know something, right? Because they're your child. But he was a great kid, and everybody loved him. If you saw him, you would love him. You talked to him, you had no idea. And he ended up getting a bad Percocet one day. Let me back up. He was supposed to go play in Canada. He had opportunities to go play in Canada, and that's what he was going to go do. And during his process, during playing football, he had some injuries, and that's why he got involved with the Percocets. And then he got a bad Percocet from someone and a friend of his, and it ended up taking his life. He was self-medicating and doing that thing, and it was just a tough deal. And so we just said, okay. When that happened, I told myself, I don't want to see these kids. I didn't know what was going on, and these kids don't know what they're doing sometimes. And my whole mission is to try to bring enough awareness to these kids and to these families that this stuff is deadly. Fentanyl is deadly. The Percocet was laced with fentanyl. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. It was laced with fentanyl, and he had no idea. This fentanyl is running rampant in our country, everywhere. And I've been invited to speak all over the country, different places, to tell the story, the actual story, and to try to help bring as much awareness, as much education, and much information and conversation to this topic, because it's just not being talked about enough. The more you communicate, the more you talk about it, the more it spreads. And the more it spreads, the more people understand how damaging and how deadly it is, and they will make better decisions. These kids will make better conscious decisions, and so that's how Stay Shaded got started. And the words Stay Shaded are the my son and I would, before we got off the phone, we'd always say, he say, "Stay shaded, Pops." I say, "Stay shaded, son." And that meant stay cool, handle your business, do what you're supposed to do. I mean, and we said that for the last 10 years, that was just something that we said. And so that's how it came about. And I don't want any parent to feel the way I feel. Losing your guy, it's a tough deal. So that's the mission for me, is to try to get out here and speak to as many schools and as many organizations as I can, and teams. I just got a call yesterday to come to TCU and speak to one of their teams, and I'm excited about that because, like I said, I go all over the place. I've been everywhere, and it's just, to me, it's a great opportunity to spread this word, to put the awareness out there, and I try to involve athletes and utilize their platform. I have a project within Stay Shaded called AAF, Athletes Against Fentanyl, and it's just a matter of when I do speak to just athletes, it's about getting them to utilize their platform to be able to put information out there and bring awareness, because people listen. Students, kids, they listen to athletes. Athletes have a bigger voice than just normal people, and I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth. Just like celebrities, athletes and celebrities, people listen to and they gravitate to. So I'm trying to get as many athletes involved with AAF and be able to get the word out there to let these kids realize how dangerous, how deadly fentanyl is. And that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's horrible what happened to you, and sorry for your loss. It's just, and I think what you're doing is great, just to get that word out. I mean, and even when we talk about transition out of sport, we talk about this. It's just, you hear a lot of sad stories right now. Um, whether it's ultimately, it could be people taking their lives. We talked about it offline. About I guess just recently there was an athlete, unfortunately, was going to be drafted high in the NFL draft and all that. But that's what we would do is make a difference, and people definitely need to look out to Stay Shaded and see ways that they can help. So how can they find you?
We're stayshaded.org, and Stay Shaded org on Instagram, and we're org Stay Shaded on X. And we're as we talk, we're building that, and that's moving and going in the right direction. I'm excited about that, and we have a YouTube channel that we're putting together that we're working on at this time, and it'll be pretty quick before it's it'll be in the next month or so that it's running the way we want it to. So, but the website is stayshaded.org, and then athletesagainstfentanyl.org. Athletes with an S on it. Athletesagainstfentanyl.org. So all that is you can find us there pretty easily.
Yeah, and we'll put that on the show notes as well. And we encourage people to reach out and reach out for help. People want to help. That's the bottom line. I mean, it's just if you're in a situation where you're hurting, there's a lot of people out there that want to help, and there's a lot of organizations like Vonn has here with Stay Shaded that won't want to make a difference. So we encourage that. You can find us at alumnidirect.com, and the podcast is on our YouTube channel, Athletes Entrepreneurs Alumni Journey, and it's across all the different podcast networks, Spotify. And we just really every week I talk about this, just phenomenal advice and just talking and hearing these stories of athletes like Vonn and their journeys can truly make an impact and help a lot of people. So I encourage people to follow it, rate, review it, watch it, or listen to it. And Vonn, thank you so much. It was great having you today.
Oh man, it was great being here. I'm telling you, I enjoyed myself, and you educated me today. So I
Well,
love that.
that's good. We all got to teach, right? It's been a true pleasure. So
Yes,
thank you.
sir.